Hello, everybody. This is Eric Farr. I'm a senior manager with AWS in the solution architecture, and I'm here today to present on delivering professional services in a COVID-19 world. Presenting with me is Eyal Darman, a managing director with Accenture, conversational AI lead in the global public services practices. In today's session, we're going to talk a little bit about doing the basics, right? All of the activities that need to get done to work in a virtual world. We're going to talk about how AWS adjusted and pivoted and some of the changes that we made. We're going to talk a little bit about experience-based accelerators in a pre and a post-COVID world. And we're going to talk a little bit about how Accenture has done some of these same activities for their clients. The key takeaways from this session today is really doing the basics well, right? We have to make sure that we're getting and doing the foundational parts of our role. But at the same time, we also need to remember that we need to reimagine the existing models for delivery in a virtual world. And understanding that AWS's experience-based acceleration is one mechanism that can help in this process. So what happened when the world got taken over by COVID earlier this year? It was a tough time for a lot of us, and it was a lot of kind of a wait and see model. Nobody really knew what was happening. Nobody knew how long this was going to take. So instead of completely pivoting into a virtual world, everybody kind of worked from home for a while, and there was just a lot of unknowns. A lot of maybe this will pass. We don't know. We took these opportunities to catch up on work, right? To work with our teammates, to work with our customers, and to really just kind of get ourselves back together, thinking that we might be back to our normal daily routines anytime. However, during that same time, customers still need to innovate on behalf of their businesses. They need to make sure that their partners are delivering for them on their commitments. So there's only so much time that we can take. So we had to quickly reimagine a new day-to-day reality of business, of employees, and operations. It really gave us an opportunity of a catalyst to change, for change and innovation. So how to be successful in our homes without actually leaving our homes? It sounds straightforward, but it's actually pretty complicated over time. So in the beginning, all the technology and all of the tools that we were using, nothing really changed. Some new stuff came online, but ultimately it was still video conferencing and phone calls and work docs and products that we can use to collaborate with our customers and with our clients. However, really it was kind of a time to think about these concepts and think about, going beyond just the basics and the baselines and really think about, how do we take what we did in a physical world and we apply it to a virtual world. So for example, just as simple things like making sure your videos are always turned on. All right. Or making sure that because you're always at home, you still have to build these important relationships. You have to make sure that you actively are seeking out other people, for feedback after meetings or to collaborate about what you're going to talk about during meetings. So it's always also super important to just come prepared. As what was happening at the beginning of the year, it's a lot of back-to-back meetings, and it doesn't lead a lot of time to preparation. It doesn't lead a lot of time to really being, able to do that. And so being prepared in advance is very important. In addition to removing distractions in your home as much as you can and around your office or wherever your workspace is. So these are the basics. These are foundational aspects that we needed to do. We all needed to kind of get back into and figure out how they work in our lives. One of the big aspects for me was time management. As I said, it seemed like my day went from kind of normal meeting workloads to almost constant meetings all day, every day. And I was really struggling with time management. So I took some opportunities to think about what do I need to do to make this better? Blocking my time off, just really working on what is my personal time when I can be with my family, or what is my professional time when I'm actually trying to work and get my deliverables done, for my customers. And so I definitely took a lot of pause with that. And if we bring all that stuff and we think about all of the different aspects, after a few months, when we all started to kind of realize that this wasn't really going to change, we started to get better at this. So I want to move back past just the foundations of what we try to do, like I just talked about, and really think about, actually getting some stuff done. So in a physical world, before COVID, there was a lot of opportunity for us to be in the same office or to be in the same room. However, that doesn't always necessarily work, obviously, in the virtual world. So if you think about back when you're on, in that physical environment, and let's say you have a deployment event and you're working with a couple of groups of people, and you're trying to deploy a workload or do some kind of delivery aspect for your customer, right? Now, what will normally happen is you're getting everything done, and there's a really strong possibility that there's some configuration or something that needs to get done. And it's not all that uncommon for somebody to just kind of manually make the quick change to get everything done. We're all sitting right there. We're all able to kind of think about the aspects of what we're doing. We make the quick change. We test that everything works. That's great. In a virtual world, it's not quite that simple. We're not there. We can't necessarily just look over each other's shoulders, and it's very risky to make those kind of changes in an environment. And so automation is such an important aspect that we can take into the virtual world that we have obviously been doing beforehand, but now it really lets us think about all of these areas. So it's a good idea when we go into these events, we're automating everything in advance. We're preparing that, and we're making that automation process work really well. So now when we're in the virtual world and we're trying to do delivery events and we're trying to publish code or, hydrate environments or whatever it is that we're doing, we're actually able to do it with a fully automated manner, in which case we don't have to worry about touching, making manual changes. This is actually going to produce really clean environments going forward, and it's going to help us in the long run. So if we bring all of this back together, I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that AWS has been doing for a while, some of the events that we've been working on, and how we've kind of taken all of these aspects that I've just talked about and we've operationalized it in the physical world, and then what we did to transition that into the virtual world. Experience-based acceleration, so also EBAs. We've been doing these for a while. Let's say EBAs really are, an aspect of a set of methodologies and a set of activities that we as AWS do to work with our customers and to use that as a kind of a hands-on experience to accelerate a delivery event or an aspect of that customer. So these are agile interactions, right? These address friction points. The whole point of creating and executing on an EBA is to really work on those friction points and to have an agile, quick manner. So these are typically kind of 3-day sprints, quick activities that get done where there's a defined input and a defined output. And we're trying to work through that in a meaningful manner in a quick time frame that we can deliver whatever it is that we were trying to get done. And in the process, we're learning a lot along the way. So these patterns could include things like cloud foundation setup or migration patterns, or even re-architecting workloads or business work, business flows, business organization. So we've done all of these kind of EBA activities in the past. So EBAs are really about empowering teams, right? Empowering yourself. It's about having fun in the process, and it's really about making sure that we're transforming those businesses during that situation. So let me go a little bit deeper into EBAs and talk about this before I move into how we moved them into a virtual world. So as I said before, EBAs are really broken down into two concepts. There's like the methodology concept of it, which is what you're seeing on this slide, and then there's the implementation side of it. So the methodology is generally made up by these 4 characteristics. So first off is cross-functional. One of what we're trying to do with EBAs is to really create a cross-functional environment where different groups of people from different teams can come together and actually execute faster than they would have been able to do if they weren't all there. Okay? So these are going to be things like domain experts from either the customer or from our partners like you, or even from AWS people where we're all coming together. And I'll talk a little bit more about what those cross-functional domains are in a later slide. So the idea here really is to break down silos, like I said. So bringing these cross-functional teams together, we can get these silos to the point where we're not sending an email or creating a ticket and waiting for a response. We're having those conversations. So this is hard in a physical world, but it's double hard in a virtual world. So the next real big concept is about the agile and iterative approach. So this is nothing new. These concepts aren't necessarily something that are new to what we're doing. But the difference is in an EBA, what we're trying to do is show the end to end and really think about how we can do an agile approach during that process. And get multiple activities done at the same time, right? Get multiple backlog items, remove multiple blockers, all in the same process. And it's not super uncommon for our development or our engineering teams to work in this model today, but it's not as common for our operations teams or our infrastructure teams to be working in this. So an EBA is a great way for bringing these teams together, both the ones that are used to working in it and maybe not as used to working in it, and actually doing these exercises together to break down those silos that I talked about. So next is really creating insights. So when we start off a project or any kind of delivery activity, there's always a set of assumptions that goes into that. The assumptions could be, how long something takes, how much money it's going to cost, etc. With EBAs, we have those same assumptions, but one of the most important things that we do is we create insights during those EBAs to try to think about how do we get better at our assumptions. So anytime we find an insight by something that we executed on, we record that and we move it back into the model so that we can get more efficient and better over time. So for example, let's say that we have an application that we're doing a migration for, and that application needs to get moved into AWS and containerized in the process. So we might kind of budget 3 people, 4 or 5 hours of time to do that, and that's our assumption going in. So, but when we actually execute during that EBA, we might find that it actually only takes a person, 3 hours to do, in which case we've now got a good insight on the amount of time it takes us to do those kind of activities for the future. So we'll actually take those insights and go and update our budgets, update our methodology and our plan to make sure that it reflects that. So in the future, we're learning from the work that we're doing during these EBAs. And finally, it's self-sustaining. We're really trying to make sure that while we can come in and show our customers and our partners how we've seen success of these EBAs at other customers, we want to work with our customers and our partners to make sure that we are enabling them to be able to do this in a self-sustaining manner going forward. So just like you don't want to necessarily want AWS people to be across your delivery over the long term, it is important potentially to have us come in and say, hey, these are the aspects of what we've seen and how we do it. And we want to do that with you. We want to show you the end-to-end model. We want to explain what we mean by breaking down these silos. We want to explain what the automation aspects is and how those insights can be gained or whatever. So the self-sustainment of these is really important. Now we're involved for a lot of these, right? But over time, we think that our customers can actually accelerate their activities in AWS if they're able to be self-sufficient and do it on their own. So it's exciting. So these are the methodologies that we are thinking about when we talk about EBAs. And we want to use these methodologies as guideposts. However, we also need to be productive, right? I mean, methodologies and guideposts are one thing, but productivity and building something and delivering results is very different. And so the second aspect of the EBA is really the implementation of this. So what we typically call our implementation of an EBA is a party, an EBA party. So as you're seeing on the screen here, we've got multiple kind of parties that we've identified and executed over time. So let's start with the people party. So a people party is really when our customers come and ask us for help on maybe changing their organization or working on how to create an organizational structure that is cloud friendly and ready to really move at scale to cloud. Instead of just sitting down and thinking about it, we actually can have a party about it. We can bring all the relevant stakeholders in and we can execute a multi-day, like a 3-day sprint to create and think about all of these organizational changes. It really gets them ready for cloud scale operations. So next we have a platform party. So a platform party is a way for us to really think about building and stress testing a cloud foundation, or a landing zone is sometimes called. So these landing zones are very important for making sure that the applications that are going to be running and migrated into AWS are done in a safe manner. They're networked together across all of the entire estate, and they have access to everything that they need. So this is a complicated process. There's a lot of security involved. There's a lot of automation involved. And so we have an entire party focused just on that, where we stress test it, we make sure that it's doing what we expect it to do, and then we move on. So for the next party, it's migration parties. So after we've got our foundation and after we've figured out that we've got our organizational structure right, the migration party is exactly what it sounds like. Our goal is to migrate applications into production live within a 3-day sprint. We typically see 3 to 5 applications going during these. And as our customers do more and more migration parties, they get more efficient, they get better because of those insights and because of that self-sufficiency. They have that muscle memory of knowing how to do it, and they go and do it themselves. So these are a great way for us to work together to migrate workloads into AWS. And finally, we have modernization party. So modernization parties are very common because once application workloads are in AWS, we're constantly asked about how do we make these better? How do we make them more cloud native? So a migration party is really designed to create that opportunity. Maybe it's re-architecting an existing application, or maybe it's creating an entirely new cloud native application in a 3-day sprint. All of the APIs and the microservices that go into that. So these parties, quite frankly, are the way that we are looking at really advancing and innovating with our customers and our partners to drive these aspects into AWS. So I'm going to move on a little bit and talk about a real EBA party and what it will actually look like when we're executing on them. So what you're seeing on the screen here is really, kind of what it might look like in a physical world, right? We understand the methodologies. I've already talked through those a minute ago. And really this aspect is, hey, we're going to get with our customers and our partners in advance of these parties, and we're going to understand, hey, where are we going to do this at physically? This is back in the physical world. So where are we going to do this at? What's the room? Where's the location? Do we need to fly people in? And more importantly, which people are we flying in? Which groups are we wanting to be in this room with us? And that really depends on the type of party that we're doing. So, but it's really important that before we actually get to the point where we're planning everything, where we really think about our customers' outcomes and we think about their desired activities that they need to do to get to those outcomes, and we work through those in advance. And so once we get to a certain point, and let's assume that we're just doing a migration party, what'll happen is we've actually got the different groups in the room. So what you're seeing here is, we might bring our platform team that we use to create our platforms, our automation team that's doing all of our automation scripting. We have a Basecamp team, which is really the team that is there to kind of our executive team or our leadership team to drive the vision forward. And we have our CCOE team, our cloud team that we've created to help all of the different cloud aspects. And of course, our security teams. Always the security team is going to be in here to make sure that the start to finish processes following all of the security patterns that are required for that customer. Now, let me give you a quick example on this, right? So it's not like everybody comes into these rooms and they sit in these chairs and then we have this session where a person is at the front like that. But normally, these are very interactive sessions. People are moving around, they're communicating with each other, they're forming different mini groups to solve different problems. And one of the things that we like to do, which is actually quite useful, is have our security team members actually disperse amongst the different teams. Because there's so much activity that happens with a security group, it's actually a great idea to have them mixed in so that as we're solving these problems, the security aspects of it are built in right away. So that's just a kind of an interesting example. Now, this is a really fun process to watch, right? And we've done a lot of these over time. And what's really fun about it is as you get moving, especially as day 3 kind of comes around, you get this excitement in the room where you're really getting stuff done. There's delivery that's happening. There's really exciting aspects that's actually taking place, and there's learnings, right? So all of those customers and all of the people involved are getting that muscle memory, and it's just an exciting process. And then comes COVID. So now we're all stuck at home. We have no longer able to actually go in and do these sessions and sit in these rooms. So no longer can we have these meetings. And this, after a while, it was pretty clear that this isn't going to go away. And this is not something that we can just say, okay, we'll go back and do those EBAs parties in a couple of months. Because after a couple of months, we realized that that's not going to happen. So as I said before, our customers still need to continue to drive their businesses. Our partners are still out there needing to drive those delivery projects for their customers. And AWS is there to help enable both our partners and our customers along that journey. And we still want to use EBAs. So we sat down and we started to think about, well, there's no reason to stop us from doing an EBA in a virtual world. And so one of the ways that you might go and notice that we can do this is using a chime room, which is the application that we would use at AWS. So here's an example of what an EBA might look like in a virtual world. So you still have the same Basecamp situation where everybody's coming in and doing the overall kickoff and the leadership discussions about the overall process of what's going on. But you also create breakout rooms. So you're still going to have kind of your security breakout rooms or your application team breakout rooms, maybe your platform breakout rooms. They're still going to have places to go. But one of the kind of interesting things that we found and that we realized was really important was those organic opportunities to break down silos. So in the physical world, those teams would just literally move to the next table or go find a breakout room outside of that conference room around the corner. And they would solve those problems really quickly. And they would come back and they would execute what needed to execute, update the Basecamp room, and then we would move on with the remainder of the party. Well, in a virtual world, it's no different. All we need to do now is create virtual or ephemeral breakout rooms where all of the individuals that are required for that particular problem would go into. They would solve those problems the same way they would do in a physical world. They would execute whatever they needed to execute, write whatever code they needed to write. And then ultimately, once that was done, they would, in that breakout room, go back to their respective rooms or to the Basecamp and update the group. So this is exactly how we have decided to pivot our physical EBA parties into our virtual EBA parties. And this model has been very successful for us. As a matter of fact, with AWS, we're not just thinking big on this, right? We've actually started to implement and do big. So for example, just recently, we've even started to create what we're calling a World Migration Week, where we're executing migration parties across lots of customers at the same time so that we're able to actually leverage our resources more at scale to work with each one of those customers and train them in different ways as they need to for these end-to-end process to get all of these parties done and completed successfully. So while this was something early stage for us, we've only done it recently, it was very successful. And we found our customers, we had 6 customers do this. They each migrated at least 3 workloads, some many more, and they really found that experience to be quite useful and helpful to their ability to deliver. And so what we're trying to do now is as we go forward, we're going to continue to scale out some of these larger kind of EBA world migration weeks or world platform weeks where we're working with multiple customers on the same lines. So it's a pretty exciting way of how we're thinking bigger and doing even bigger. So now that I've discussed some of the ways that AWS has provided delivery capability and professional services in a virtual world, I wanted to turn it over to Eyal so he can talk a little bit about the approach that Accenture is taking during the same time frame. Eyal?
Thank you, Eric. Again, my name is Eyal Darman, and I'm part of Accenture's public service team. One thing that we wanted to share today is a little bit about how we helped customers when COVID hit, and talking a little bit about the challenges that they faced. It was important for us to think about how to build agility, resilience, and growth in a time where everyone went virtual, in a time when government customers are seeking government services and looking for how they can get more information and more engagement with their government organizations. It was important for us to think about how we're able to help enterprises and government organizations be more data-driven, have them be more powered by technology, especially as they went virtual, as they started closing down their front offices, as their walk-in centers ceased to exist. And we wanted to make sure that we were able to help them enable not just a short-term, but also a long-term solution that they could leverage and they could utilize moving forward. And so what we tackled is a circumstance with government organizations that really covered three different pillars. One, they started with a lot of minimal automation. They had a very people-dependent workforce, meaning that people needed to take paper applications, had to do paper processing, there was mail that was coming into the physical building, and their IT shop was fairly small. And so here's a little bit about what we did with that. So first of all, we leveraged in many cases Amazon Connect. We deployed anywhere from 50 to 250 agents in a matter of a week, giving those government organizations the ability to go virtual, the ability to have their workforce work from home, but still provide those same services, those same benefits to their government clients. We also deployed virtual assistants. Those virtual assistants provided a new channel of service for those customers. They provided the ability for government agencies that previously didn't have a 24/7 support structure to be able to provide that capability to them. So that was the first week. And then within 3 weeks, we started to add more and more features and functions. So think about starting with Connect, enabling your agents, having a virtual assistant, and then weeks later, turning on live chat integration, giving the ability for the virtual assistant to escalate the conversation to a live agent to complete it, making sure that we have that first contact resolution. Enabling, for example, the IVR when the call center is closed to deflect to that virtual agent and provide the ability for a reduction in wait times and ultimately better service to customers. Either before COVID or after COVID, these capabilities will certainly be lasting with these organizations. Although they had such an immediate and direct impact to them during COVID times, they will certainly be there afterward and provide these organizations with new services, new channels, and new capabilities moving forward. How Accenture views the AWS toolkit is very critical for people to consider. We leverage AWS professional services. We do AWS well-architected assessments. We make sure that our resources have the training and the certifications. And more, if you think of all of that put together, we've developed and co-created and jointly invested in an Accenture AWS business group, having dedicated resources, participate and focus on specializing in AWS so that we're able to do what I just described. We're able to do that turnaround of less than a week to turn on Connect, less than 3 weeks to do a full end-to-end integration with an IVR and provide the ability for our customers, our government agencies, to better serve their customers, the citizens that need those services from those government agencies. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Eric.
Thanks, Eyal. I appreciate it. And some really exciting work being done by Accenture and how you're able to support your government agencies and other clients during this difficult time. I appreciate that. So I want to close a little bit and talk about some of the ways that you as our partners can actually go a little bit deeper into the aspects of what we've talked about today. So the first section that you're seeing on your screen right here is really a deeper dive into EBAs. So instead of me getting into the depths of all of the aspects of how EBAs works, I thought it would be better in your own time where you can go out there and you can actually take a look at this. So this video is specifically being done by SAP, where they did a really large set of migration and modernization parties with AWS to break down a very large monolith and make it more microservices and agile based in the process. So it's pretty exciting. It's pretty interesting. During that breakdown, they actually were able to take that monolith into 19 discrete services. They removed hundreds of backlog items, and they removed dozens of blockers just during these EBA parties. So it's a pretty exciting deep dive into how that works. On the next part of the screen is really about our partner cast. So as our partner in our APN program, everybody is able to go out there and access PartnerCast. So these are actually going to be live interactive webinars on all kinds of topics, from technical to business to other aspects of AWS and the way that we do things. So if it sounds interesting to you to go out there and get a deeper dive across different partner-related technical or business aspects, check that out. And then finally, I put a little bit in here about some of the concepts we've talked about today. So Eyal brought up a little bit about Amazon Connect. And we also have some really good training out there on desktop and application streaming with AWS. So you can go out to these links and get free on-demand training courses on these to kind of help you understand some of the concepts of what we were talking about today. So I just want to thank you all for listening to me today and for Eyal and listening to Eyal and really just understanding that I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us in this COVID world, right? Even though we're all at home and we're all doing our virtual working collaboration, there's lots that can be done. And so the key takeaways that I really want you to have from today is to understand that to be successful in this world, we still need to really focus on the basics. We still need to make sure that we're doing the basics well so that we can then execute on the harder aspects of it. But I also think it's important to understand that we can reimagine our working models like we did with EBAs, right? There's ways that you can take what you've done in a physical world and reimagine it for the virtual world. And I encourage you to do that. And really, I just also think it's important to understand about the EBA process and EBA parties that we have with AWS and really understanding, what those are and how they could be used for you and your customers in a virtual world or in a physical world at some point in the future. If this is something that you or other partners are interested in, please feel free to reach out to your partner manager or anybody at AWS that you work with and to find out more information. So good luck, everybody. Please stay safe out there.